In this section of the class, we're going to be talking about the risks for abuse, and those are factors that, if present in a family, are going to increase the chances that maltreatment may happen. Now, when I first began teaching this class, I started at this point in the section of the course, I would often talk about theories of maltreatment. And there are lots of theories out there as to why certain parents maltreat. But what I found over the years is the theories are not really as helpful because they often talk about the same kinds of risk factors, but they combine them in just slightly different ways. And it seemed to me that it wasn't very helpful. So what I do nowadays is talk about the specific factors that increase the risk for abuse. So let's talk about some of those factors. One of the obvious factors or obvious potential problems is intergenerational transmission. If you think about it, parents probably parent their children much in the way that they've been parented. And so if a individual was abused as a child, then they may actually grow up to be parents who abuse. Now, the exact number of people who are abused and then grow up to be abusive parents is kind of difficult to determine, and you see different numbers. But the estimates that you see in the literature are about 30%. Think about that. About 30% of children who are abused or maltreated go on to maltreat their own children. Does that seem low or high to you if you think about it? For me, the first time I heard those numbers, I thought it was a bit low because I thought many more kids would parent pretty much once they grew up, parent like their parents did. And so less than a third actually do. Of course, when you think about the story of Mary Ellen, who was subject to serious abuse, she went on to be a good parent herself. So maybe the 1/3 number is pretty accurate. Also, the type of abuse that you experience might be sort of predictive as well. So for verbal abuse, or what we would call psychological abuse, it does seem to be higher. So if your parents called you names, belittled you, you tend to act in that same way towards your own children. Neglect seems to be a little less than the 30%, and neglect may be different, and we'll talk about that more when we get to that section. But certainly, if you were abused as a child, that is a risk factor for potential maltreatment as an adult. There are also many what we call parental risk factors. These are factors in the parent themselves that might place them at increased risk for abuse. One of the most common, I think, is parent management skills. Getting kids to do what you want them to do takes some knowledgement and some parenting skills. Some parents lack those skills, and that not having those skills then leads to maltreatment. For example, some parents over-rely on physical punishment as a means to control their child. And because they rely on physical punishment a lot, if they also are not very skilled at getting kids to do what they want them to do, that reliance on physical punishment can lead to abuse. Because over-reliance on physical punishment is not going to help raise kids in a good way. And so what you'll always have to do is up the ante on the physical punishment to get kids to do what you want. So I've seen that a lot in parents that I used to work with, where the first thing and the only thing they knew how to do was to use physical punishment. And when kids didn't comply, they had to up the ante and make the punishment even more severe. Parent management skills also could be, you can see this type of thing even in well-meaning parents. And what I mean is parents who really want to be good parents, they want to do right by their children, but they lack the ability or the skills to manage their kids. And what happens then is their kids get out of control. And let me share with you one such family, and we're going to see this short video here. This is an episode of that TV show that was on quite some time ago called Super Nanny. And if you all remember, Super Nanny was a reality show where Joe, who was the Super Nanny, would come and try to help a family whose children were out of control. Now what I'd like to do is show you the first 12 minutes of the Super Nanny show that featured the Bullard family, and then show maybe one of the techniques that Joe used with the family, and then show you the update. Okay, so let's take a look at the Bullard family.
And see who we've got here.
Okay, hi, we're the Bullards. I'm Jen and this is Bryce.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about our two kids, Brycey, who's 6, and Rylan, who's 2. We own a plumbing company, and Bryce runs the operations outside of the office, and I run the operations in the house.
Bullard Plumbing.
When Bryce is at work, I'm usually taking care of the kids, manning the phones, making sure all the invoices and bids get out.
The problems that we have with Bryce basically are back talking us all the time.
No!
Not listening.
Get in here now.
Get in here. No.
Stop it.
Being very rude and disrespectful to us.
No!
You're 6 years old. Stop.
Bryce,
No.
just settle down.
Bedtime with Rylan. It's pretty frustrating.
Rylan just does not want to go to bed at night. As a mother, I feel like I've done something wrong to create this. I feel like the kids run the house.
Hang on, no, just wait.
Bedtime. Come on. It's been 15 minutes. This is crazy. Don't you throw that toy back. I got you.
I think it's just easier to give in to the kids
You don't want to brush your teeth?
than to enforce the rules.
Okay, you don't have to brush your teeth. Will you just come out?
I would love to get control of our house back. I would love to know that we are in charge instead of my children being in charge.
Definitely love to get the control back.
I am begging for Super Nanny's help right now.
This family clearly needs help, and I'm on my way. Hello.
How are you?
Fine, pleased to meet you, Joe Frost.
I'm Bryce, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Bryce.
Nice to
I'm Joe
meet
Frost.
you.
Nice to
Meet
meet
you.
you.
I'm Jen, and this is Rylan.
Hello, Rylan. When I first arrived at the Bullard family, they were extremely pleased to see me.
Say nice to meet
Say
you.
hi.
Pleased to meet you.
Come on in.
Okay.
I think I was expecting an older, very stern woman.
I was expecting Super Nanny to be really strict and ready to tell us exactly what to do. Say hi.
It was a wonderful surprise when I met Jo. She's someone I feel like I could sit down and talk to right away.
Jen and Bryce, I know that you've got some issues that need to be addressed, but I'm here today to observe you as a family. So go ahead as normal, make out I'm not here, and I will watch you.
Sounds
you.
great.
Brilliant. All right,
Thank
then.
you.
Just after I arrived, Brycey started to act up.
Hey, tell me about your day.
Crazy!
It was cold out? Bryce,
Yes!
what's the deal?
It's the deal.
Brycey could sometimes be disrespectful in back-talking his parents.
That's not
Very
nice.
nice.
You don't have to say that. You don't have to talk like that. Hey,
When?
Bryce,
When?
And is that constant? The smart mouthing, the...
the smart mouthing, yeah, has definitely gotten worse. Smart mouthing is yeah, real bad. Hey, Bryce, you're gonna go to timeout and go to bed early. You're gonna go to bed early tonight.
Okay.
And the mimicking, all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, he does that to annoy us.
There are ways in which you can voice your opinion, and how Brycey does that is not acceptable.
There you go, guys. Don't color on the table.
The boys were colouring at the dining table, and Rylan went to colour on Brycey's book, and he had an absolute fit.
Bryce! Stop! Rylan! Bryce! Stop it!
Tell him to go to
Settle
timeout.
down. Bryce!
No, put him in timeout. Go.
Bryce, listen to me a second.
Hey,
Hey! Bryce!
that's ridiculous.
Look
Go
at
tell
me.
him to go to
Look
timeout.
just wait a second, Bryce. Brycey, look at me. Okay? He doesn't know better.
Bryce, he doesn't understand. That's
Bryce,
the
that's
problem.
not yours. Yours is right here.
Yeah, you don't have to act like that.
It's all right.
Why do you act like that?
Bryce,
It's all just got a little bit heated. There's no communication going on in the kitchen. And clearly, Mum has had enough.
Do you need help with anything?
No. What are you coloring? What is that? Buller Plumbing. Buller Plumbing.
The phone doesn't stop ringing. It's constantly ringing. It's really loud as well.
That was too easy.
Hey, don't drag him.
Easy.
Where were you? Oh, come on.
Businesswoman now.
I'm constantly moving. If I'm not working in the office, I'm doing laundry. If I'm not doing laundry, I'm taking care of Rylan. If I'm not taking care of Rylan, I'm mopping the floors. So there's plenty to do here during the day.
There you go.
There goes my phone.
Jen's just taken on too much for her own good.
Come
Nothing's really being done properly.
So why don't you just get them started with some spaghetti?
Hang on, I'll get you some.
So Jen, you get to eat tonight?
I do get to eat tonight. Just a little later. Okay, here we go. Buller Plumbing, hello? Can you hear me? Okay, let me go get on a different phone. Hold on 1 second. This phone might be going dead.
It's 7 o'clock and Mum's day still hasn't ended.
Not on the couch. We're working over here. You guys go over there. Bryce, we're working over here. Okay, come on. Settle down, settle down, settle down.
It's 9 o'clock at night. The children are overstimulated, running around the house. How are they going to get the children to bed?
No! Sweet dreams. I'll leave it cracked.
There we go.
Okay?
We're putting him to bed, right?
I love you.
You ready to go night-night?
Okay. Good night, sweetheart. Putting Rylan to bed, it's hard work. That usually takes hours. Mommy's here. Oh, you know what? His Winnie the Pooh blanket's out on the couch. What's the matter? Let's get your blankie. Come on.
Here, Rylan. Here, buddy.
I love you. Sweet dreams, sweetheart. I love you.
There we go. Night-night, buddy. I
Good
love
night.
Getting Rylan to sleep is a nightmare. It really is a nightmare for the whole family.
No, Rylan, come here, sweetheart. Come here. Brycey, hold on a second, please. I love you.
you. Rylan, hey. Come on.
Come on, Bryce. It's fine.
The only thing is that you'll just sit with him on the couch until he goes to sleep. That's.
You need to stay out of it because you don't usually put him to bed. So why don't you just let me try and you go work for a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Okay? I'll be right back to check on you. I'll come check on you, honey. I love you.
Right, so how many times do you do that a night?
Probably about 5 times.
5 times. Putting him back into bed,
Yep.
comes out, putting him back to bed.
Yep.
Okay, does he come out of the room?
Yes, sometimes he comes out of his room, which he's about to do right now.
Jen trying to put Rylan to bed was extremely emotional to watch. How does that make you feel when you've got to listen to your baby crying?
It's exhausting. It's horrible. I don't know what we did wrong, I guess. I don't know how this started or when it started. But I just don't know how to help him. Putting Rylan to bed takes hours. I think it was maybe 9 times he had gotten up until finally I just agreed that he could sit on the sofa. Sit with Mommy. No. It just feels hopeless. I just don't see an end coming to it. Hey.
You can take a break, hon. You don't have to.
As you can see, you have two well-meaning parents here who want to do right by their children, but because they don't understand how to manage their kids properly, the kids have gotten out of control. We'll watch just one little technique that the Super Nanny shows Jen Bullard on how to get their little one to bed, and then I'll show you the update, the family after the nanny work through some of the skills. As you notice, one of the things that she will probably put down is some kind of schedule where the phone doesn't ring all day. She also teaches Mrs. Bullard about timeout and how to do it effectively and so forth and so on. But let's take a look at the method that she used, and she suggested for getting little Rylan to go to sleep. And so it's a little ways up here, right there.
Read stories to him, and then very quickly he gave her signs that he wanted to go into the living room.
No sofa. Here. Lovely. Rylan's room.
So
Lovely. Pretty your room. Kisses and cuddles. And eat his cup. Rylan, it's time for night.
So Jen put Rylan in his crib, and he didn't want to go there.
Mom! Mom!
Say nothing, Jen.
Mom! Mom! Mom!
I started to kind of feel anxious about the routine when I had to bow my head and basically ignore him.
She's doing really well. Rylan decided to climb out of the crib. Jen went back into the crib, and he just went mad.
When Rylan was just crying, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy," it got to be too much at one point. I almost got up and grabbed him out of the crib.
Jen became very emotional and started to cry. Listening to her child call her name was just ripping her heart out.
Although it was only 25 minutes, it seemed like an hour. I honestly could not have done that without Joe. I was just so excited that we had gotten my 2-year-old to sleep, and, fairly calmly. I was just so happy I can't even put it into words.
So that was one of the techniques. And so let's just pull ahead and look at the end of this video. It was just a family update to show you how the family was doing months after the Super Nanny, after Joe left.
I am so thankful that we were able to go through this whole experience.
We have control back, we really do, and Jen's happier, I'm happier, the boys are happier. Brycey doesn't backtalk anymore. Get your spoon.
Excused?
Yes, you may.
Rylan just goes to bed within 25, 30 minutes.
Bryce now understands that we can run a business and still spend quality time with our kids, and nothing's going to be broken.
I can see how happy the kids are, so I'm definitely going to put the kids before the business now.
Bryce and I have a whole new outlook on life.
We communicate better, we're more loving towards each other, we don't really yell at each other that much anymore, and it's affected us in a positive way.
We are going to take what Joe has taught us, and I think it's just going to get better and better.
So you can see these techniques that the super nanny uses, then the parents can then use them as well. One thing I just want to point out is that you saw the Bullard family. When the house was chaotic, it's not just the parent and the child that are affected, but the parents' relationships with one another are affected as well. You know, you could see how much stress there was between the two, the mother and the father in the family. And so having problems like this in terms of managing your children affects every part of your family. So what you see what the super nanny does is what we would call parent training. She trains parents to be able to do things in a different way in order to manage their kids properly. Now, the interesting thing about parent training, and we're going to come back to it at some point in the course, it's something that abusive parents are often offered. They're offered parent training, but it's not the kind of training that really is effective, not like super nanny, because super nanny's in the household. She works with the family one-on-one. Most family parenting training is done in groups. It's done in a class. You give parents some tools, you may do some role modeling, and then you send them home and expect them to be able to pull this off. As you can tell, that's going to be very difficult. Even Jen Bullard, who was very motivated, by sitting by that crib, she probably would have given up if she didn't have somebody there to support her. So parenting skills are extremely important, and the lack of parenting skills is a huge risk factor for maltreatment. But, of course, as you might expect, there are other risk factors as well. Other family risk factors, and they're going to come up over and over again, is things like single parenting. We know that having only one parent in the family is a huge risk for all kinds of problems, particularly neglect. So if you're talking about physical neglect, it tends to be 87% higher in single rather than two-parent households. Emotional neglect, 77% higher in single-parent households. And educational neglect, 220% higher in single-parent households. Why do you think that is? Why is a single-parent household such a risk factor for neglect? Well, I think most of you can figure it out. Having only one parent to take care of everything, and that parent likely has to work and cook and clean and do all those kinds of things, it's pretty exhausting and very difficult for one person to do. And so single parenting then is a risk factor, particularly for neglect. Another familial risk factor is domestic violence. In fact, some states actually define witnessed domestic abuse as child abuse. So when kids are in a household where they're watching and seeing domestic abuse occurring, some states actually label that as child abuse. And why do they do that? Well, because developmental studies show that children who witness parental violence have the same developmental problems as children who are directly abused. So just even witnessing domestic violence is a risk to kids as well. And in terms of witnessing domestic violence, in many of those families, when parents can't manage to work with one another, chances are they're not doing very well with their children either. So there's a connection between domestic violence and physical abuse, child abuse. The last one I'm going to mention in this particular lecture is family size. Now, we saw the Bullard family as a super nanny episode, but if any of you had watched multiple episodes of Super Nanny, you would see a pattern. Most of those families are larger than normal, with 3, 4, and 5 kids, and they tend to have kids that are very spaced together. So maybe having 4 kids, all of whom are under 6 or 7 years of age. And we know that family size, larger families are more at risk for maltreatment. And again, it might be a resource issue, just like single parents. The more kids you have, you're trying to spread that parenting out among more children and you only have 2 parents. And think about what that might mean for a single parent to have 3 or 4 children, all of whom are under the age of 6, let's say. So those are the kinds of risks that then start to build up and create an increased risk for abuse. We're going to stop here, and the next time we're going to pick up by talking about some other kind of parental risk factors, but very specific factors. So for example, how might different types of mental illness or intellectual disabilities affect parents? We'll talk about that next time. Thank you.